All right, everyone, I think we will go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today on our webcast on Integration Made Easy, JD Edwards and Salesforce. My name is Joanne Casley, and I am on the business development team here at GSI. I'm very pleased to welcome our guest presenters from Magic Software, Lori McCartan and Ted Brennan. Lori is a 25-year veteran with experience in many aspects of information technology. She joined Magic Software Enterprise in 2007 and has successfully led the Magic XPI Oracle initiative since 2009. Today, Lori continues to lead the Magic team responsible for Magic XPI, a leading integration platform integrating all Oracle applications to the rest of the world. Lori continues to work with partners and customers running JD Edwards and frequently can be found at all JD Edwards events with her signature bling lanyard. Ted is a technical sales engineer with over 15 years experience in pre- and post-sales product demonstration, customization, implementation, and support. He provides clients his expertise in the setup, installation, configuration, and troubleshooting of document imaging, content management, ECM ERP, workflow, and AP automation products. Ted is a regular attender and presenter at numerous industry conferences and regional user groups. We're very excited to have them, and they will take over in just a few minutes. But first, I want to give you the chance to look at our Safe Harbor statement. And I wanted to give you a brief agenda for today's webcast, which will last about 40 to 55 minutes. First, we'll go over a couple of quick housekeeping items. Then I'll provide a brief company overview of GSI before turning it over to Lori and Ted for the main presentation. At the end of the presentation, we'll go over our upcoming educational events and then wrap up with a 10-minute Q&A session. If you would like to submit a question during the webcast, you can do so through the questions panel, which is located at the bottom of the GoToWebinar console window, which should be on the right side of your screen. Please note that we do address all questions at the end of the presentation. If you'd like to minimize your GoToWebinar console during the presentation, just click that red right-facing arrow key on the top left of the console. And now for a brief overview of GSI. GSI is a full-service consulting organization. We were founded in 2004, and we now have over 100 employees with offices nationwide. We've been recognized twice on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies. GSI is an Oracle Platinum partner and Salesforce ISV partner, and our consultants have an average of 15 years experience working with JD Edwards, Salesforce, NetSuite, and Oracle Cloud. JD Edwards specializes in GSI specializes in project consulting, managed services, and cloud and hosting services, and all of our services are backed with a 100% guarantee. We are also a forward-thinking product development company, and we have many popular products, including Genius, which is an advanced monitoring and performance analytics solution for any business-critical system on any platform, Genesis, which is our load and stress testing application for system design, validation, or expansion that can be used on any web-based business-critical system, G Shield, which is GSI's two-factor authentication and password reset solution for JD Edwards, Rapid Approval, which is a configurable application for quickly processing workflow approval requests in Salesforce, JDE Cloud 9, which is our private hosting solution for JD Edwards, and finally we have Rapid Reconciler, which is GSI's Oracle validated tool for JD Edwards inventory in transit and receive not vouchered reconciliation. So in short, we are a one-stop shop for your business system needs. I would like to now turn things over to Lori for the main presentation. Lori, you there?
I am there. Thanks, Joanne, for that. Let's make sure that you can all see my screen.
Yes, we can.
I can see it.
Great. Great. Well, good day to everybody out there. I want to first thank you all for taking the time to join us today as we discuss how, with a little magic, you can integrate Salesforce to JD Edwards in an easy fashion. And again, we thank you for taking the time today, and we'll move through this quickly so that we can get to the demonstration as well. But just so that you know a little bit about Magic, if you haven't met us at most of the JD Edwards events that we attend and sponsor, we've been around for over 30 years. We are a global ISV, and we focus on integration solutions as well as application development. We, Ted and I, reside here in the North American headquarters for Magic Software, which is in sunny Southern California. But we have 24 offices across the globe with 1,800 employees and lots of very happy customers, both partners as well as end users. We have strategic alliances with Oracle. We're an Oracle Platinum partner. We offer Oracle Validated Integration Certification endpoint adapters for JD Edwards, both World and E1. And we are, of course, a Platinum partner with Quest, the International Users Group, and an App Exchange, certified App Exchange partner with Salesforce today. Today, we're going to talk about how, with a little magic called Magic XPI, we can offer you a modern application integration platform that will connect not only Salesforce to JD Edwards, but all of your third-party applications as well. And just think about us as a middleware platform that sits between all the different applications, regardless of where they are, whether they're cloud-based, hosted, or on-premise, and we orchestrate the business processes between those applications. Ted, in a little bit, will show you more about how that works with a live demonstration with JD Edwards E1 version 9.2 integrating to Salesforce. But when we talk about Magic XPI being a modern integration platform and making it easy for JD Edwards users to integrate, the most interesting thing here is that out of all the different types of integrations that we do with JD Edwards, integrating those third-party applications, CRM is the #1 use case for us. And of course, CRM integrating to ERP and sharing that kind of information is really native. Both of them have information that needs to be in both locations. And so we'll show you how we make that easy and to do that. Now also to keep in mind that Magic XPI or integration is used very commonly for e-commerce and web portals, anything supply chain related, PLM, warehouse management, Microsoft SharePoint, Active Directory, CPQ, of course, and EDI are some of the top use cases for us as well. But let's get back to integrating Salesforce to JD Edwards. What do the users see when you integrate the two applications? Basically, the users see the usual interfaces. They look at Salesforce, they see a record that they're working in, and they look at potentially the users looking at JD Edwards, just see JD Edwards. What happens, the magic that happens, I should say, is all behind the scenes, and the users don't even know that it is occurring. When we talk about Magic XPI, and I talked a little bit about having an Oracle Validated Integrated Certified Endpoint Adapter for JD Edwards E1, what that endpoint adapter allows us to see is all the business functions that are in JD Edwards. And in those business functions, or with those business functions exposed, we can take all the blessed actions against those business functions. And as we move through, Ted will show you how we do that. Now, when it comes to Salesforce, we're using the Salesforce endpoint adapter that we have, or the Salesforce APIs. It allows us to see all of the standard fields as well as the custom fields that one may have in their Salesforce application. And it allows us to pick up that information either in real time and or scheduled events and move that information between Salesforce and JD Edwards in a bidirectional fashion. So it's very simple. We take Salesforce, perhaps you may be adding an order. It comes in through the Magic XPI middleware platform, and then again can go out to the business functions and into JD Edwards on the other side. Now keep in mind too that there are the business services available in JD Edwards, and Magic XPI can work with them as well. So the Magic competitive edge, what we offer is we offer a middleware platform that gives you some great development capabilities. It is code-free and metadata driven. It is very visual. It's drag, drop, and configure. And we give you over 100 generic adapters and connectors that you use in that drag, drop, and configure model. We have all the certified enterprise adapters for JD Edwards, for Salesforce, et cetera. But one of the key components I firmly believe in successful integration today is the capability of monitoring the traffic or what goes on, the transactions. Were they successful? Were they not? And if they are not successful, what type of action did we take? Did we send out an alert to someone to make sure that they understand that? So we offer these great development capabilities, and Ted will show you more about that. Now, deployment capabilities also are important as well. Many of us work for organizations that are global, or even if we're not global, our business may be global, and it is a 24/7 world. So it's important to understand and to know that in Magic XPI, we offer the automatic failover and redundancy capabilities, and that we are platform agnostic. We don't care where we sit. We don't care what we sit on. It depends upon what your business needs are. And we do support, of course, anything on-premise, anything that is cloud or hosted, etc. That doesn't matter to us as well. So in the Magic XPI integration platform or middleware tool set, we have a studio where the design is done. We have the monitor that I talked about that shows you the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there is a server-based as well, which is Windows, Linux, or an IBM iSeries. The development studio looks like this. To anybody who is a business analyst or developer, you'll notice that it looks like Visual Basic. And it allows you to pick up components from the component repository, drag them over to the palette, drop them and configure them, and then move on from there. There is no limitation as far as how many different integrations or logics you can develop using the Magic XPI platform or toolkit, and it is fully reusable as well. And then, of course, this is just a quick picture of the drag, drop, and configure, and the wizard-driven menus being dropped down for you. The component library, as I said, is robust. It has over 100 generic adapters and connectors in the box that you drag, drop, and configure, and they're divided into enterprise application components, office productivity, technology framework components, messaging, SOA, communication protocol, etc., and file handling. And I'm sure that you guys will understand that more with Ted. Now, the one thing that we always have to make sure of is that it is a code-free environment, and there is an XML mapping tool within the tool set that most of the developers I know call their best friend. And this allows you to map from the source to the destination without writing any code, except you may want to make some changes or transform the data along the way. And you do that right here by writing a quick transformation of the data. Of course, in JD Edwards, the date schema sometimes in JD Edwards is not the same as it is in other applications like Salesforce. So you need to make sure that you can transform that data a little bit so that all the information lands in the anticipated fields. Picture of the monitor, Ted will go into that in more detail, but it is a web-based monitor, so you can monitor the integrations from wherever you may be. Now, one of the most important things I believe also in success in any form of IT is make sure that you choose the right partners, a technology partner as well as an implementation partner. So that's why Magic and GSI have been partners for many years now. Together, we offer a full technical team located here in North America, and we provide technical support, professional services support, training support, and a combination of all of the above. So it is important that between the partners, you can have the type of professional services that will guarantee your success in the projects and in the integrations. So we are straightforward, right-sized integration, and just to summarize, it's hybrid, cloud and on-prem applications. It's a reusable, scalable platform, so it can handle all of your integration needs or automating any business processes you may have. It is drag, drop, and configure, code-free, comes with lots of good adapters in there as well. Supports bidirectional transactions, real-time and or scheduled events, and of course has that web-based integration monitor. So with that said, I will turn it over to Ted so that Ted can take you through the magic. Now, Ted, do I have to give you control?
Yep. You make me the presenter.
Okay.
I can do that for you, Lori. It's okay.
Okay, great, Joanne.
Somebody does. I'm not picky.
Did you get the pop-up, Ted?
Looks like we did.
Perfect.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Well, if you can, everyone can. So greetings, everybody. We'd all like to welcome you to this presentation. I'm going to show you the solution and how we can help you integrate your Salesforce environment with your JDE environment. So before you is the Design Studio, where we build the various integrations and with these various applications we're talking about. So as you can see, it's very visual. But it does open in Visual Studio Shell, but in the middle here where you would normally see lines of code, we have a very visual drag and drop linear process. The flows go from top down and then right to left. So this is a pretty extensive integration I built with Salesforce and JDE. So as you can see over to my left here, I have the list of different flows at the various data points that are typical with, what most people are integrating between Salesforce and JDE. So I got what I'm calling out by messaging was really is a customer sync, and then I have an item sync from JDE to Salesforce, and then a sales order sync. And so they're made up of these various flows with various types of logic in it. So the nice thing about our flows is that they're scalable. So in this particular example, I'm looking for new items in JD Edwards Enterprise One, and I'm creating products from those items in Salesforce. Well, this flow here will always create products in Salesforce as long as it has the proper parameters to it, so passed to it. So I can leverage this again and again. So here when I have this other flow creating sales orders, if I go into my sales order validation routine, and you can kind of see this logical flow here, one of the things I'm doing is I'm checking to see if the line items match the products in Salesforce, and if not, I'm going to go ahead and create them on the fly using that particular flow. So all the flows are scalable. Speaking of flows, they're made up of these things called connectors. So these connectors not only come with connectivity to these various applications we're talking about, they also come with built-in with the proper API structure for whatever that application happens to be. So as Lori mentioned, in the case of Salesforce, when I go in this configuration scheme here, what I'm doing here is I have a visual representation of the web services that are available and exposed in Salesforce. Now for JD Edwards, those are, as Lori mentioned, business functions. So when I open up this connector here, as you see, I'm leveraging the address book master business function. So the strategy and the method of the API is going to vary between these various applications. And so when you're using that, you can have the confidence of knowing that you're using an integration method that is supported by that particular application. Now, in the case of Salesforce and JDE, these are both examples of what we call pre-built connectors. And what that means is that we've built these connectors specifically to connect to those particular applications. So what that means is that we've gone to the vendor and we've submitted for their approval these connectors, and we go through a rigorous routine to have them certified, and they come back with us and say, yep, you can go ahead and put our logo on it, and what that means, it's an authorized connector. And so we have those for both JD Edwards Enterprise One and World, and we have that for Salesforce and some other applications here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but if we have an opportunity to integrate with something we don't have pre-built connectors for, well, that's okay too. So I have a number of different generic connectors that allow me to leverage other applications I don't have pre-built connectors for. So as you can see here, I have a number of different messaging standards that allow me to get a message from various applications, and that can be used as to trigger a flow and to use as an integration between those different applications. I have an HTTP connector, which allows me to be both a provider and a consumer of HTTP, both SOAP and REST web services, and I can be. And so if there's a SOAP and REST web services available for that particular application, I can leverage that as well. I have an FTP connector and a directory watch connector, which the FTP connector, of course, supports secure FTP as well. One of the integration methods typically for some e-commerce applications out there is whenever records are created, it drops an XML into a folder, and I can pick that up and leverage that from processing. I have what I like to call, and I have a number of, WCF client, HL7's connectors, a messaging scheme specifically to the electronic medical records industry. And I have a number of different other types of generic connectors. And one I probably use the most often is our data mapper connector, which I like to think of as a jack of all trades connector. So in addition to everything else it does, it allows me to talk into a database in its native language. So here I'm doing a query against the item master tables in JDE, and I'm talking in SQL because I selected the SQL driver. So it talks in whatever, it allows me to talk in whatever native language based on the driver I select. So if you have an Oracle database, we select the Oracle driver, and I can talk in Oracle. If you have a DB2 database, if I am using the DB2 driver, it allows me to talk in DB2. And if you happen to be a rockstar query creator, you can write this by hand, kind of like I did, but if not, then that's okay, because I have a wizard that walks you through building these queries. So the general idea behind XPI with the whole drag and drop and the wizards and everything else and making it very visual is so somebody at the business analyst level can build and maintain an integration without requiring the skills of a full-on programmer. Of course, programmers would be comfortable in this environment as well, but we built this so somebody at the business analyst level, somebody who may not be a full programmer, but they know, they administer Salesforce, or they administer the JDE environment, and they know what information they need to get from the two applications and can go and leverage that. So let me show you what this looks like to an end user based on an integration I did recently. So here, one of the schemes here in these flows, I'm actually taking new accounts and I'm creating customers in JD Edwards Enterprise One. So I just did this one recently. Here's an account in JD Edwards Enterprise One, and I went and selected some basic items that typically come when you create an account. And I transform some of the items as well. So a phone number here, revenue, the industry is banking, phone, address book and stuff like that. So I went ahead and passed that over to my JD environment, as you can see here, but it wasn't a one-to-one translation between all the data points, as you can see. So here, when I have my Salesforce, I have a linear record for the prefix and the number, and as you can see, I've separated these out here to two different values. And instead of passing the industry and the annual revenue, these are fixed points, I had to transform those into a language that JDE can understand, for those of you who understand JDE. So take banking, for instance. I can't just pass the value banking over to JDE. So when I went in here, I had to set conform to the standards that JDE is expecting. So here there's it won't allow you to set a specific linear value. You go ahead, it has to conform to JDE standards. So I picked the code based on that, and I'll show you how I did that in a transformation. Same thing with revenue. So the revenue coming in is 10 million, but I couldn't pass that over just like that. Of course, there's a revenue range in JDE, and I'll show you how I did that. Which, by the way, is all seamless to end users, as Lori pointed out. So users don't need to learn how to use XPI or anything of that nature. They don't, there's no magic button or anything like that. They just go ahead and create the records, and what was once in one environment is then passed to another. So here is the integration I actually did between accounts and customers. So here is the first process flow that's getting the new accounts, and that kind of gets into triggering. So we can trigger, and by the way, build this whole tool based on whatever your business needs. So when we're looking at integration projects between Salesforce and JDE, or really anything and anything else, we're not concerned so much with technical stuff. We're looking more for the business case for what you're trying to solve. So in the case of Salesforce and JDE, that's usually things like opportunities to sales orders and customers and contact information and items to products and things like that. But one of the things we ask when we get into this is, well, what's the best? How does your sales team utilize Salesforce, and what information do they need from JDE? And the same team, how does your JDE team get information from Salesforce, and how are they using it? So take, for instance, accounts and contacts. Now, in this particular example, because this is a demo, every time someone goes in there and creates an account, it's going to create a contact, an account in Salesforce. It's going to create a customer in JDE. But maybe it doesn't make sense to do that. When you're in a live system, because if you just pass accounts and accounts over without doing any business with them, you're just going to have a lot of junk data in JDE. So maybe it makes more sense for you to wait until there's a closed won opportunity, and then we can create a sales order and then create the customer and things like that on the fly. So what I mean to say by that is this tool bends to your particular business process and your business needs, not the other way around. So we can form this and build this according to however you're using these products in your business. Now, in the case of our connectors, all of them will do schema discovery. So when I click on my Salesforce connector, and I click on this ellipsis here, as you can see, it's a very visual utility that allows me to connect to those different data points and do some various things with them. I can query records, I can create records, and all that stuff. But when I click on this ellipsis, it does a schema discovery back to the environment to get me whatever information I need. So if you have custom data points or custom index fields, I'll be able to get all those things. So sometimes the question comes up, people, will engage with us and say, well, Ted, I have this system and it was put together years ago, and frankly, it wasn't put together right, and I got, different stuff and different tables and different data points, but really what I need someone to do is to put it together into one data point so I can pass that over to JDE. Well, that's no problem for us. We'll be able to get all that information so we can collate and transform that data before we pass that to your target system, in this case JDE, and the other way around too. If you've got advanced pricing and all kinds of stuff in JDE that you need managed and passed back to your Salesforce environment, we can collate and get that too by getting to all those different data points as well. So that also gets in the subject of triggering. Again, we can trigger based on whatever your needs are. Sometimes you'll need stuff right away. Sometimes you need stuff, it doesn't have to be right away. It can be a few seconds for a few minutes or even an hour, and some things you might want to sync overnight. So, we can accommodate those triggers based on, your business needs. Is it all new orders? Is it all new orders created today? Is it sales orders created by a certain sales team? So any of the data points and any of the index fields, we can use that in a where clause to develop our queries and make sure we build and transform that data before we pass that on to its target. So if it's something like a sales order, we can build some error handling and things like that to make sure we create proper transactions. I'll go to that in a minute. So here I have my new accounts from Salesforce, and I'm ready to pass these into JDE. And this is where we're getting into where most of the work is. So here I'm passing this to variables that'll eventually be passed over to JDE. So here I have all the different data points that came over from Salesforce. So in this XML, and I'm going to go ahead and pass that over to JDE by simply, and this is a one-to-many and a one-to-one and a many-to-many. I can take that and I can put that value, and I can take that and put that to, I can take one variable and I can pass it to one data point, and I can pass it to simultaneously, or the other way around. I can put 2 to 1 as well. So that's one way we can handle that. And if it's a case of things like industry codes and things like that, I can go ahead and transform those along the way. So here, if I go into these calculated values, I have a number of different VB.NET type functions that I can cycle through to manipulate that data. So here's my variable as it's coming across, and if I leave it clear, nothing's going to happen. What literally is passed to one variable will be literally passed into the other. But I have a number of VB.NET type functions that allow me to manipulate that data and convert it accordingly. So in things like date time format, I might say, I might be able to manipulate the date time format. Need to manipulate the date time format because the date time format of the source sometimes doesn't always match the destination. So I have that. I have a number of different if type clauses that allow me to maintain that. So I got some if else. I got some if statements to do, transform things like agriculture. So in the case, let's say banking was the industry code is, let's say 200. So I can say, if it's equals, then I can say, okay, what would happen is the data, if the data passed in is read as banking, it'll transform that data to the appropriate code to pass over to JDE. So, sometimes people ask me, Ted, what happens when you have a bad transaction in JDE? If you try to create a record, there's a bad transaction. I said, well, of course, we can handle that in exception handling, but ideally, since we know what it takes to create a good transaction, we can prevent that by transforming the data and doing a validation lookup against it to make sure the data conforms to what we're looking for, so we can go ahead and make sure we don't have a bad transaction. So not only does this allow you to build and maintain an integration, you have a way of transforming and validating that data before you pass it off to your target application. And so, with these tools, with these mapping tools, as you can see, it's very visual, it's linear, it's drag and drop. We say it's a code-free utility, but we give business analysts a tool that allows them to build and maintain an integration that's just as powerful as one built by a full-on programmer. Matter of fact, it's easier to maintain as well. I mean, as you can see, the way this is visual and labeled, this is essentially self-documenting. And if you ever need to make changes, all you need to go do is go, if usually some of the changes that need to be made, or sometimes there's new data points that are added, or sometimes new index fields need to be accounted for. So if I go in here, and here's where I'm passing my variables over to my business function in JDE. So here, if there's mappings, if there's a different variable, I can go ahead and here's where I'm doing one of those transformations. Same thing, and I'll just show you revenue range too. This is using the address book master business function. There's a number of different functions I was using there. All I have to do is go back in here, redo my mappings, or change my variables, or add, remove, and recompile them. I'm up and running in a matter of minutes. So, not only does it help you build it, you can maintain it as well. Now, important part of our solution is also monitoring the applications and the integrations once it's been put in production. So here we have a monitoring tool that allows us to do that. So here I have a web-based tool that I can log in to the server here, and I can see all the different projects that are being run, and I can see if there's anything wrong with them, or if everything's going healthy. So I have a lot of really neat visual tools that can tell me what's going on in this environment. So here are the list of different projects I've connected to this server. The one in green is the one that's running right now. I have a visual dashboard that I can kind of see the processing. I can pass messages back and forth to this utility. I can monitor the different flows and the different triggers. I have a neat activity log that I can break down between the individual flows and the individual business process as well. So here, outbound messaging is the one I did earlier, and when I have two flows: get the accounts and create the customer, and I'm passing some information back and forth. So not only can I monitor what's going on, I can pass information, metadata too. So I'll just kind of explain that. So the nice thing about this utility, and the nice thing about our solution, is I can capture application-specific exception codes. So as we all know, of course, we have our own exception codes in the utility, but Salesforce and JDE and other applications out there, they all have their own error codes, and they make sense to somebody who's familiar with the application or may have done some development, but they don't necessarily make sense to a knowledge worker that may have to make some corrections. So we can actually capture any exception code coming from any application, and we can transform that data in a method that makes sense to an end user. So here's a good example right here. This is an error I left in there just to kind of show you what exception handling looks like. But the error 54 just essentially means that I'm doing a query and no data is being returned, and that's totally fine because there's not always going to be data. It's only when there's new data created. But instead of leaving that, if a knowledge worker needs to see that, I can actually transform that to say, you know what, don't worry about this error. It doesn't mean anything, or I can even set it up to where you won't see something like that at all. And when it comes to exception handling, we are not limited to using this tool either. I can actually send you an email message to let you know when exceptions occurred. So as we all know, with exception handling, usually it's best to handle things in code, but if something, if there's a hard stop that needs to be reviewed by a knowledge worker, I can go ahead and send that, I can stop that, and I can go ahead and send somebody an email saying, hey, there's something going on that needs to be looked at. So a good example of that is typically if we're doing sales orders between JDE and Salesforce, or really anything. Typically what will happen is, even though we'll do an initial sync between the item master and the products in Salesforce, as we're doing the integration, when we're doing sales orders, before we try to create a sales order in JDE or vice versa, one of the things we'll do is, and the dependencies, as I'm sure you're all aware, is you can't create a sales order unless you have the items match what it's expecting. You can't, create an item, create a sales order with items that don't match your item master. So I can do a secondary check, a query, before I create the transaction against the item master saying, hey, do these items match? And if not, I can go ahead and stop the sync, and there's no point in creating it, right? Because we know it's going to be a bad transaction. I can send someone an email to whoever's responsible for creating those items or maintaining those items and saying, hey, this is something you need to look at. Here are the ones that are on the order, and here are the ones that aren't. And of course, with the utility, we could of course create those on the fly, but as a general rule, most people don't want anything created in their item master in JDE without being reviewed by the JDE administrator. But it can go either way. Now, another neat thing about this utility is, in addition to all the exception handling, I can also go in here and let's see, go back to my outbound messaging, is I can pass application-specific metadata. So in this particular example, every time I create a new customer, what I'm doing is I'm capturing the metadata that I tried to pass between these two applications. So this is another good troubleshooting tool. So what I can do is, if I'm continue to have issues or if something goes wrong, I can go back in here and say, well, okay, well, this is why my transaction's failing. I got some index fields that aren't being handled properly. So the nice thing about this utility as well is that it has a very small digital footprint. It's one server and one database on the back end. Database can even be something like SQL Express. We're not a database. We're not a data repository. We don't hold on to data long term. And it's leveraged by a utility called a company firm called Gigaspaces called In-Memory Data Grid. And what that does, it allows us to temporarily expand an internal server's RAM for the purposes of passing very large amounts of data back and forth between these various applications. So, sometimes, generally when Salesforce, when you're talking about Salesforce and JDE, there's kind of a limit to how many orders are being created per day, depending on the size of the company. But some of our customers are implementing 24-hour-a-day processing with e-commerce applications where they're getting just orders all night long, all over the world, and they need something to it maintains that integrity and can handle that. So they always test us with their Black Friday order days when we do our user acceptance testing, and we always pass with flying colors. So In-Memory Data Grid not only orchestrates and manages your integration, but it makes the overall transaction significantly faster than some other options out there. The nice thing too is it also comes with built-in active-active clustering. So typically in production, we will deploy to 2 or more servers, and that way you'll have built-in failover capability. So if one server goes down, you got another server that'll go ahead and pick up the slack. So as you can see, this utility can conform to your business process, can help you integrate Salesforce and JDE and even other applications out there in a code-free drag-and-drop utility that allows you as a business process owner to build and maintain integrations throughout your organization long term. So Joanne, that was pretty much what I expected to present today. It looks like we have about 20 minutes for questions and those kinds of things.
Okay, sure. Yeah, let me just go ahead and take control. All right. Well, thank you so much for that presentation, Ted. And we will get to the Q&A section in just a couple of minutes. So if you would like to submit a question, please go ahead and do that now through the console. If you minimized it, you can just click the arrow and then send your question through. So this webcast was part of GSI's ongoing educational webcast series. Our upcoming webcasts are listed on the screen, and you can find the entire schedule on our website at getgsi.com/webcasts. I also want to mention, again, if you're thinking about upgrading to JD Edwards Enterprise One version 9.2, we do host 9.2 upgrade workshops all over the country, and we cover both technical and functional topics, as well as demonstrating the new features in 9.2. We will be in Detroit, Michigan on October 24th, Irvine, California on November 7th, and Durham, North Carolina on November 14th. If you'd like to register for one of these events, please go out to getgsi.com/workshops/JD-Edwards. And for those of you interested in finding out the latest and greatest of what's coming out for Salesforce, I want to mention that Dreamforce is coming up from November 6th through 9th in San Francisco. The GSI Salesforce team will be there, so we hope to see you there too. To register, you can go to salesforce.com/Dreamforce. And if you would like to sign up to receive weekly email reminders on our upcoming webcasts or to receive our monthly newsletter, the GSI Insider, you can go out to getgsi.com and find the link for each at the bottom of the homepage. So now I would like to move on to the Q&A section, and it looks like we do have a couple of questions. So it says, this seems similar to some of the capabilities of Orchestrator. What are some of the key differences?
I'll take that. So one of the things I notice about our key differences is that Orchestrator is very good with some of the out-of-the-box functionality of the applications it's designed for, but our utility is really more of a application agnostic integration tool. So as Lori mentioned, we're platinum partners with Oracle. We have a tight relationship with Oracle. We do a lot of business with Oracle, and same thing with Salesforce. We do a lot of integrations with those utilities, and when it comes to CRM and ERPs, I'd say the most common scenario we run into is Salesforce with JDE, but we are not specifically an Oracle or a Salesforce utility. So we've designed this so it's just as easy to integrate those applications as it is with any application out there.
Excellent. And then another question is, will this presentation be made available so we have the information on the 9.2 conferences and the other webinars? And I can go ahead and answer that. Yes, we do send out an email with a link to our resource center where you can access all of our past recorded webcasts. And we also send a follow-up email with a PDF of the presentation. Obviously not the demo part, but you can watch the recorded webinar if you want to watch the demo again. So.
Yeah, and to add on to that, please contact Joanne or really anyone at GSI through us at Magic, and we would definitely like the opportunity. Of course, all the details of this will be made available, but we would definitely like the opportunity if you have some specific questions or show you specifically how we can help you integrate your JDE in your Salesforce environment as well.
Okay, perfect. And then let's see, the next question is, would the Magic Monitor work for monitoring DB performance or keeping tables from overriding themselves due to lack of disk space?
Well, the monitor itself doesn't, but you can actually build that into your integration tool. So typically what we'll do is when it comes to duplicate records, there are some APIs that do that automatically, and that will go ahead and report if that happens. If not, one of the things we usually do when we build an integration is do a check. So obviously before I create a sales order, I take the sales order number, and one of my checks, I didn't show it in that demo, but I'm checking against Salesforce to see if the sales order has been created already. And regarding the table monitoring, you can of course use it to monitor really anything in the environment and pass information accordingly, but you would have to build that when you do your integration.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Kathy, for that question. And then Ravi is asking, how is XBI integration tool different than MuleSoft?
I'd say the biggest difference between, thank you for that, this comes up a lot. When I go to these events and to put it more directly, I'd say ours is more robust. It's a lot easier to use. And one of the reasons in all of my demonstrations and on these webinars and at these events when I go to is I always, and it's usually me because I'm the pre-sales guy and I do all the technical stuff, I do live demos for customers when they come by and to show you how easy it is to use. That's why I'm going through the mappings and the steps and everything I do to build an integration. So ours is a lot easier to use. It has a more robust reporting functionality, and probably, if you want to say, probably the most significant is our leverage of the in-memory data grid that orchestrates and manages the overall integration once it's built.
And this is Lori. Let me just add one other thing, is the Oracle Validated, Integrated, Certified Magic XPI Endpoint Adapter for JD Edwards World and/or E1 is one of the major differentiations between Magic as well as Magic and MuleSoft.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. Just give another minute to see if any other questions come through. But we do appreciate everyone who has submitted those thus far.
I'll add some one thing if we're waiting on questions. We got some time. Will just kind of address some of the issues that come up as questions that I haven't heard yet. As like you said, our utility for integrating with JDE is we leverage the business functions, but some JDE customers have the Java messaging queue and they have the BSSV server, and they've developed their own web services. And someone say, well, Ted, that's great. You have the connector and you're using business functions, but I already have the web services set up. I've invested a lot in that. Can you use that? And the answer is absolutely we can. So we have a lot of customers that have done that, and we can leverage the web services just as easily as it is with the business functions.
All right. So looks like that's the last of the questions. So before we wrap up, I did want to mention that we do ask that you fill out a brief survey when you exit the webcast. And once you submit that, you'll go into a drawing to win a $25 gift card from Amazon. And as I mentioned before, we do send a link to the Resource Center so you can watch a copy of this webcast, or you can go through the PDF version of the PowerPoint. And with that, if you do have any follow-up questions, if you'd like to, schedule a demo, or if you just have more questions on the product itself, you can reach out to either myself or Lori. Our contact information is on the screen for you now, and we'll be more than happy to get that set up for you. Let's see. Oh, okay. Looks like we had one last question come through. With Magic XPI, can it accomplish completely flattening a complex XML with optional repetitive parent-child nodes with varying levels into a simple flat .txt file?
Absolutely, we do that a lot. So we can take data from Flex files, we can pass them into XMLs, we can build and modify XMLs on the fly as well. So if you have an XML with a particular schema and the schema is not really working for you, we can modify the schema. So if you have if the schema is coming in and it's a one-to-one relationship and you need it to be one-to-many, we can change it to one-to-many quite easily. Typically when we're conforming to different flat file and XML standards, what we will do is the incoming XML will pass everything as variables, and then we'll recreate the XML going out, or same thing with flat files. So quite easily, and something we do quite frequently.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Larry, for that question. All right, so let's see. Just want to make sure nobody else has one last question. Please feel free, again, to reach out to us with any follow-ups. And, again, thank you to Lori and Ted for this great presentation. Is there anything else that either of you want to add before we wrap up?
Nope, just from our side, on the Magic side, we want to again thank you for the opportunity to present Magic XPI for integrating Salesforce to JDE, and thank you for taking the time for the presentation today. We are always pleased to do any kind of JD Edwards informative sessions with GSI as our partner, and we hope to speak to you all soon again.
Yep, thanks for taking the time to watch us today. We appreciate it.
Sure. Okay, and then there was, looks like someone had a question about validation. So they want to know if we have more information regarding validation aspect. Is that something that we can follow up individually with him about?
Yeah, so the kind of validation, what I'm talking about is transforming records and validating it meets your, so that can be as simple as currency conversion, or it can be counting, matching, an invoice, data coming from an invoice to receiver documents, or that kind of thing. So we can typically, what comes in, we'll pass it as variables, then we'll do a query against, whatever data structure we need to get the information to say, yep, it's valid and it matches our expectations. So there's a number of validation is kind of an open-ended subject. You can there's a number of different ways that can be interpreted.
Right, absolutely. Okay, perfect. All right, so let's see, there's process validation. Okay, all right, well, thank you so much. Again, we can follow up with anyone else on any additional questions or anything specific that they would like to discuss. We're more than happy to coordinate that for you. So thank you to Magic Software and to all of you for joining us today. Have a great day.
Our pleasure. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.